Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to do the bearing maintenance on a 7,000 pound Dexter axle. This particular axle has disc brakes, but the procedure is applicable to drum brakes as well. These are the easy loop axles. Yeah, it's nice to lube them from just lift the tire, spin the tire, and then pump some grease in until grease starts coming out. But personally, for me, every 3 years or probably 12,000 miles or 16 or 18,000 kilometers, I like to take the bearing out, clean them all out, and check them out, do a full inspection, repack them, and then put them back into the trailer. So this is what I'm going to be doing today. Okay, so this is a trailer I'm going to be working on today. The first step in the process is to get, I like to lift all 4 tires off the ground first. So this particular trailer has a stabilizer system. So I make sure the trailer is level. I use the self-level option from Lippert Level Up, and then I use my hydraulic jack to lift all axles off the ground, and put jack stands on each one of the axles and make sure that the tires can spin freely. So that's the first step. Make sure all 4 tires are off the ground. All right, so the next step, now that the tires are completely off the ground, what I like to do before I remove the lug nuts is I want to check the old bearings to make sure that they're okay. So what you do is to hold the tire from the top and the bottom, and then you try to wiggle it. You're supposed to see a little bit of wiggle, just a little bit. If it's too much wiggle, like if it's more than a 1/8 of an inch or more than a 1/4 of an inch, quarter would be probably extreme, but I can feel a little bit of play, so this is normal. But if you feel too much play, that means the bearings are gone, and like this is a serious problem. You need to definitely change the trailer bearings. Okay, so all the tires are off now. So since I got the tires off, this is a great opportunity to rotate the tires. So what I do is I just swap them in an X pattern. So every 2-3 years I swap them in an X pattern. And then what else I can do is double check that the torque is good. So for these ones, the torque is 65 foot-pounds for the spring U-bolt nuts. And what I do also, this one, the trailer has greasable shackles. So I just pump some grease in it to make sure everything is good. So that's what I'm gonna do next. Some of them can be really hard to push the grease in, so I think I need to relieve the pressure off the suspension of this part, but it's gonna be difficult to do. So this one's really hard. Some of them are easy. There you go. So these shackle bolts, you could torque them, try to torque them if you want, but you have to make sure not to turn this side of the bolt. So you only have to turn the nut, the nut, because this one has splines in it. So once it goes into place, it's supposed to lock in place. So if you turn this side, you're gonna destroy the nuts, the splines. So one of the other things that you could do, obviously, since you got the tires off, is to inspect the suspensions. You want to make sure that the leaf springs are not broken, and the equalizer device is fully functioning. And the other thing is make sure the axles, I mean, they're supposed to have a little bit of camber. And you want to make sure that they're not nothing major is broken. And what I noticed, for instance, in the last trip that I took this trailer to, I noticed that these bolts for the spring U bolts were loose and they were moving, so I could see some scuff marks on the axle. So that's why I retightened them. I rechecked all the torque now, and they're tight after like a 2,000 kilometer trip. So once they're tight, they're tight. And obviously the other thing too is you want to inspect the brake pads. If you have disc brakes, if you have drum brakes, is when you pull the drum that you can inspect the shoes on the inside, but they usually last a long time, the shoes. This is the first time that I have disc brakes, so this is the third year on this trailer, so I'm guessing probably they last the same as a regular car, but they look fine here to me. So the next step is to remove the calipers. These calipers, they have, there's a whole bunch of different varieties for disc brakes on trailers. These are the newer style disc brakes that there's only 2 bolts on the back. Once you get 2 bolts on the back, I should be able to remove the caliper. But some others, they have more finicky parts, so it's just a 1/2 inch socket. They're supposed to be torqued to something like 30-40 foot-pounds, so they shouldn't be too tight. Once you get them out, there's a bolt that you have to pull out. See, they have Loctite on the bolt here, so I'm gonna make sure to put Loctite back up again. So once I get the 2 bolts out, these 2 here, just pull the caliper, and this is a good time to inspect the brake pads and maybe get a part number off of them for the next time you want to reinstall them or change them. And you have to make sure not to leave the caliper hanging off the brake line. So what I usually do is I just put it here, so it is fairly secure. If you think it's not going to be secure enough, or you're going to be doing some hammering, then you have to tie it so it doesn't fall off. So I have to do that for all 3 other brakes now. Okay, so we're now ready to remove the hub slash disc. So what I use is I have this tool. It's fairly sharp here. Just gonna hammer on it and then pop the cap off. It's coming. Alright, so all the caps are out. I cleaned up the grease from here so you can see. Some axles, they come with cotter pins, but other axles, they have a retainer. And all you have to do is just kind of take a screwdriver and just pry it out. Just make sure not to damage this retainer because you're gonna get to reuse it after. So that's all really, that's all. And just make sure I put them in the cap so I don't lose them. And the axle nut is supposed to be loose. There's a special bearing preset procedure that I'll show you later on how to do it, but you could just remove it by hand. So there's the axle nut, and there's a washer behind it too, but sometimes you can't get it off. So what I do is now next, make sure to get the grease off my gloves. So it is a similar procedure for drum brakes as well. So get the grease off my hands because I'm gonna hold the disc brake. And then what I do is I put my hand right here. So first of all, I want to see. There you go. So you put my hand so the bearing doesn't fall off, and you just kind of pull it out, and then exposes the spindle. So that's really all to it. So I bring this back inside the garage, and then I'll remove the bearings. Okay, so all the hubs are out. Now I get to inspect the spindles. So I wipe the grease, the leftover grease off, and I'll just put a little bit of brake clean on them and just wipe them and just inspect the surfaces just to make sure that they're all good and there are no scuff marks, major scuff marks or major damage. And once especially the seal surface in the back, I mean, it shouldn't be damaged if the bearings are okay. And you can see how the Easy Lube axles work. The grease comes in from here and comes out from there. So it's fairly simple. So that's it for this part. Essentially, we just leave the trailer and we'll head back into the shop and start working on the bearings there. Okay, so I got the hubs out and I laid them on the floor in the exact same orientation as the front of the trailer. I want to make sure not to swap them, even though I mean it's not a critical to swap them, but I want to have the same wear on the pads and the discs. But it's very, very important that once you get the bearings out, not to mix them up, because the bearings are broken and matched to the race that is pressed into the hub. So once that is ready, I got everything that I have ready here in my shop. If you have a parts washer, that's great. If not, you could just use a metal can, and I use some Varsol paint thinner. And I have some brushes, compressed air ready, and my garbage can, as well as shop towels all ready. I'll wear my latex gloves and start cleaning the bearings one at a time. And then I'll start with the smaller bearings first. I'll clean them and put them aside and make sure that they're right. And then I flip the hub over, remove the seal, remove the big bearing, clean the whole inside of the hub. The bearings are clean. I made sure to keep the same orientation, so the trailer front is this way. So once you clean the bearings, you have to inspect them to make sure that they're okay. So the first thing that you look at is the rollers. The rollers have to be shiny and there's no pinning on them. So that's the key thing. If they are pitted, you have to change them. If there's rust, you have to change them. So unfortunately, these are brand new Dexter axles, and you would think they would be using Timken bearings. I guess not. There are some generic Chinese bearings, but so that's an additional reason why you have to inspect them every 2 years, every 2 to 3 years, or depending on the mileage that you have on your trailer. So all of these ones look fine. I'm gonna blow some compressed air on them just to clean them some further. I'm just leaving the solvent soak for a little bit before blowing them dry. So the next thing is I flip the hubs the other way around, and now you can see the seal. You need a special, well, I mean, there is a special tool, but you don't need it. You could just use just a screwdriver. And I do have the special tool. It's my toolbox. It's this guy here. So this is the special tool that you have to use, that you can use. And then all you have to do is just kind of hold it like this, and then you yank on it super hard until it comes out. It's kind of hard to do with the phone in my hand. Let's try this again. So you just gonna hold it like this. There's 2 ends to it. Whatever ends. There you go. And you're just gonna pull it out, and that's the seal. So the seals are generic seals. They're 2 1/4 inch seals. Some axles they have 2 1/8, but and then you can just get the inner bearing out, and then I will clean the entire inside of the hub. So all the bearings are all cleaned. Once again, I kept the same orientation, so the trailer to the front, so I know. These are the big bearings. They look fairly good. I don't see any major damage or anything like that for me to change them, but it's not a big deal to change them. It would be the same procedure to change them as I'm doing right now. I'll show you what you have to do to get the races out. So I got the big bearings are all done. The small bearings are done, and I cleaned them and air dried them, as well as the nuts and the hubcap. And the hubs are all cleaned as well. So I cleaned all the grease. I removed all the grease from the inside. So in order to change the bearings, you can see the smaller bearing grease there. So you just take a punch, and then you punch it. You go slowly all around to get it out, and then you do the other same thing from the other side. You want to get this one out, you flip it around, and you do the same thing. So once you get all these cleaned up, now we are ready to start greasing the bearings and putting them back in. So there's many methods to grease the bearings. What I'd like to do is I'd like to use this bearing grease tool, which you basically just take the bearing, put it right here, and then you screw this on, and then I use a air operated grease gun to fill it up with grease, and then until the grease starts coming out, and I just take it out, put it in here, and I'll show you, once I have them all done, I'll show you how to put the seals. Okay, so the bearings are packed. The big bearings are packed, and I put them in place. And then I got the seals over here. I'm going to show you how to drive the seals. So the first thing is you put a block of wood underneath, and then we're going to use another block of wood. So the manual calls for putting some silicone or RTV sealant here at the back. I've never used any, and I'm not going to use any now. So I've never had any evidence of water going or anything like that. So I'm just going to drive them in. So I'm going to just put this, then put it on top, and then give it a good smack. Gotta make sure that it's as centered as possible. You don't want to overdrive it in, so that's why this piece of wood is perfect. So it just goes in perfectly straight here. So that's all for driving the seals. So now I can turn this guy around. It's ready for me to pack the small bearing and put it in. Okay, ready to put the hub back on. So same procedure as when we took it out. I like to put my hand here just in case the bearing gets pushed out. So just go slow. There you go. That's very simple. Then put the nut, finger tighten the nut in. Then we're going to have to do the torque procedure for setting the bearing preload. So I'll put all hubs in place, and we'll set the preload. Okay, so for setting the bearing preload, set the torque wrench to 50 foot-pounds, and then you have to tighten the knot slowly as you turn the hub. So turn the hub, tighten. I'll do it a couple times. Turn the hub, tighten, turn the hub, tighten. It tightens just a little bit every time. Okay. Okay, so once that is done, that's it done. Just now make sure not to touch the hub. Then what you have to do is you have to loosen the knot. So, okay, so just it's loose. Okay, so now Okay, so now I tightened it. Now it's loose. Here I got the retainer. There's a flat edge here. This is where the retainer goes. So you have to loosen the nut just enough so that the retainer will fit in place. There you go. Okay, so it's supposed to be a little bit loose. So once that is done, we'll put the hubcap back on. Okay, so make sure this is right. That's in. So we're gonna drive the hubcap the same way that we put the seal. Just make sure you hit straight. Go. That's in. Then the grease cap. There you go. Okay, so that's ready. So now if you have drum brakes, you would be pretty much done right now. All you have to do is just install the tires and torque the lug nuts. But because I have disc brakes here, what I'm gonna have to install the caliper, and the caliper torque is 50 foot-pounds. There's 2 bolts at the back, so I'm gonna do those. And I did put some anti-seize on the studs here. So and then after that I'll be done, and I put the tires on. So once you're done installing the tires, you have to make sure to check to see if you have the same amount of play for the bearings. So spin the tire, then you hold it top and bottom. I can feel a little bit of play. It's a little bit less than before. I checked all 3 other tires. All right, so all I have left is basically to lower the tires on the ground and just drive the trailer. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching, and make sure to like and subscribe, and see you next time.